Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, mtamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Tuesday night once again here at my dad's, shall we say, scholarly farm garage. I think it's proper to call this place scholarly. There's a lot of experiential knowledge in this building. You got tools hanging around all over the place. They're all understood and well used. But it's not just that. I remember back in the late 70s, long before cars had computers in them and diagnostics, and a guy could work on his own car if there was a problem. There was Dad sitting in his easy chair with a Chilton's auto repair manual. And he was reading it and turning the pages and finding out what he needed to know to fix a problem with one of the cars. But it even went a little bit beyond that. Now, you might argue that a scholar pursues knowledge for its own sake. Does that really apply to my dad? Every tool he would use would be for a specific type of job. But I remember this one time. I saw him standing there holding the pump for the windshield washer fluid that comes out of a car. I think one of his brothers gave it to him. So he's holding this thing, and I'm like, Dad, what are you going to do with that? And he's there, I'm going to take it apart, and then I'm going to put it back together, and then I'll know how it works. Dad sets an interesting example. And you know what? You just missed him. Tell everybody about the plugs every 8 feet.
Well, when I built my house, I got a code manual, Pennsylvania Electrical Code Manual, and I was impressed that they wanted to plug every 8 feet from in each room or hallway. I was very impressed with that.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. All right, very nice, thank you.
Plug it in.
Plug it in. All right, thanks, Dad, I will. I like this rocking chair. I may use this setup again in the future. And it's appropriate I'm sitting in one because I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do a farm garage video this week. And that would have been because of the long Memorial Day weekend. I had a pretty full dance card the last couple of days. I partied with the Human Encyclopedia on Saturday. I partied with my silent partner on Sunday. And on Monday, I partied with the cleanup man. And Saturday and Sunday were just a warm-up for Monday. Now, it was a cookout. He's got a grill on the back porch. There were hot dogs, bratwursts, and hamburgers. There was potato salad. We started doing shots of tequila at 12 in the afternoon. And I was washing those down with this hard cider he likes to get. Later on, there were mixed drinks with rum and vodka. We kept this up till about 9:30 in the evening. We were watching movies all day long. I'm in his room, and I'm sitting in this really nice easy chair, too. I mean, it was a recliner. You could go back. Now, in front of me was this small table where you had the shot glasses for the tequila. And I look down, and I see a cork on that table. And I'm like, what's that cork doing there? And then I realized it could only mean one thing, that I had taken the tequila bottle and put it into the refrigerator without the cork. It was at that point, I think, I realized I was beginning to fade and decided it was time to head home. I had a really good time with the cleanup man. I walked home. I was more sober than I expected to be, which meant that the next day wouldn't be like a hangover Tuesday, which it isn't. But because that Monday was devoted to partying, I really didn't get anything prepared, especially for the Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community Act, because that's what you're here for. There is something in the FIT report I want to talk about. And in fact, I extracted some of the language out of the FIT report, had it printed up. I was going to bring it, and I forgot it. So it turns out that aspect of the Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community Act that I wanted to get into may end up as a standalone video, which probably would be for the best. I could sit down, I can think about it, I can write up 1,000 words and do that. So, I think I'm going to sit back and take a little break for a moment.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives.
Well, there's always something interesting here in my dad's garage or outside. What can I show you today? Well, it's a very nice evening up here tonight. Best so far this year, if you ask me. I wanted to get some shots while it was still light. As you can see, both garage doors are open. Well, what I'm going to show you is the old farmhouse, or what's left of it. That's the foundation. Interesting building. We lived in it from 1962 to 1974. It was 2 stories, but what made it fascinating was how it was put together. It had to have been like, I don't know, maybe 120 years old or so. And originally, it was a 2-story building with 2 rooms on the first floor and 2 rooms on the second floor. But what made the building even doubly fascinating is it had these very, very large porches. And right over here, at some point, the porch got enclosed and it became our living room. So there was that aspect of it. Now you got to realize this was all taken care of by the time we moved here. But back here, there had been another porch over this empty space, and it also got enclosed, and it became our laundry room. So what had originally been just a kitchen and a big room on the first floor became a kitchen, a big room, an even bigger room, which was the living room and the laundry room. Had a coal furnace down in here, right in this spot. There would have been a set of stairs off to the right. Well, they're all gone. Yeah, interesting memories from this place. Right here had been the coal bin. And I remember more than one winter when Dad would go out in his dump truck and come back with a load of coal, and we'd take that window off and we would load the coal through that window and into the bin. Yeah, as you can see, the foundation has this pretty old look to it. I mean, that's a newer section that had been added on, but look at how those stones were just stacked. And our house was sitting on top of all this. Yeah, we've been cleaning this out pretty good. Yeah, we moved out of the house in 1974. Would have been nice if you had enough money to like save it. But what ends up happening is if you got an abandoned house out here in the country, well, you're going to end up with like squirrels and other kind of wildlife living in the attic, living in the rafters. The roof starts to go, and when that happens, well, that's all she wrote, as they say. But anyway, you still got a wooden door there. What's left of what used to be home. Well, I think I have everything I need, except enough time. I ran late tonight. Oh, it's like past 2:30. I'm in a real big hurry to put this show to bed. But I do have one thing to show you. I have a copy of The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Greene. He had this big bestseller a number of years ago called The 48 Laws of Power. He's written other books. He's one of those writers, when he publishes something new, I'll go out of my way to get a copy and read it. And the Human Nature channel is actually kind of excited about delving into this book and maybe coming up with new perspectives. This could signal a new direction for the Human Nature channel. No accordion. Maybe I can do a song and put it in a video and fit it in. We'll see. Because I have something I actually brought, but no, not tonight. Anyway, we're bringing the curtain down, Irv. Any final thoughts? Irv says, let's hear it for the power of positive drinking. And you know what? Every once in a while, it actually does work. Time for your close-up, pal. The big reason I was running late on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning was because I was doing a lot of reshoots off of a prepared script. And even after I had everything I wanted, to my dismay, I noticed the light sensor in my camera was not resetting properly, and my skin was turning more and more orange with every retake. Plus, I didn't like the way my head was bobbing up and down as I was looking off the page. I ended up shooting a lot of video I didn't use. I'm picky that way. But one thing I enjoy that's a result of doing Las Vegas shooting videos is the comment exchanges I have with Eric Peters. I look forward to them. Eric has a great sleuthing mind, and he and I go back and forth over details. We debate interpretations. And I cannot give him a higher compliment than by saying he makes me go back and rethink my positions. Eric also happens to write very well, and I enjoy reading his work out loud. So how about some Las Vegas shooting truth community yak, because that's what you're here for. Eric, I really want to delve into the LIRs again after you've been mentioning them a couple of times, especially into the opening and closing of doors with or without leaving. That is usually done to let someone in or out. We can often match them with the food deliveries and housekeeping visits. Why wouldn't all the other times be Paddock opening the door for other visitors arriving or leaving? It's only when you exclude that he has to be paranoid. Me. Hi, Eric. YouTube is not sending me notifications of comments consistently. I'm glad I came here and checked. Anyway, getting to your comment, I don't rule out the possibility of guests. I just didn't talk about it in the video. Hopefully in future LVS yaks I'll cover this, since there's reason to believe Paddock wasn't as all by himself as Lombardo implied. Also, I wasn't necessarily thinking paranoid to describe Paddock's behavior. Now, I'm sure there was some level of fear, but I wondered if Paddock could be testing the Hot SOS system as part of his surveillance, which included the cameras in the door and on the food cart. The cameras would have given him a heads up if security was coming down the hallway. If he keeps testing the doors and nobody is coming to check on him, that could give him the confidence to proceed through the steps of his setup. Paddocking the fire door alcove risked some exposure putting that bracket on the door. Before doing so, he might have wanted some reassurance that, odds are, he'd go undetected. Eric. I've always had difficulties with the idea that Paddock was testing security's response or trying to signal something with card/door manipulations. I think the risk of attracting attention would have outweighed the benefit of having the assurance no response from security was triggered. He would never have complete assurance anyway, that the manipulations when it mattered would not be the ones that finally triggered a security response. If he understood anything, it was statistics, and he'd have known he could not rely on what remained a fairly limited sample of experiments to draw conclusions for the future. Speaking of statistics, why did he need so many key cards? I counted at least 7 cards on the bar counter. That's more backup than realistically needed for one person. That further supports the idea that he needed the cards for other people to have access to the rooms. Key cards occasionally don't work, but usually only in the beginning, at arrival. I can't remember ever having the problem that a key card stopped working during a stay. Having 1 backup card per room should be enough to deal with that unlikely eventuality. 3 to 4 cards per room is excessive for one person. Now, if he wanted to hand out cards to other users, then he would want multiple cards. And then the testing would make sense, as he would want to be absolutely certain that the card would work before giving it to someone else. Him in the foyer putting the bracket in place, yes, that would have been the highest risk moment for the operation. Also, the point of no return. It took over half an hour between that moment and the start of the shooting. That is a fairly long time, as the risk of detection would increase by the minute, and according to the narrative, that was indeed how he was discovered, through a rather unlikely series of events involving an open door in another room and an unlikely route by Campos towards that room right at the moment the shooting started. Another thing that makes me skeptical towards the security response testing theory is that these suites must often have a lot of lock activity, as they're used for wedding receptions, meeting rooms during conventions, etc. I don't think a level of activity like the one shown in the LIRs would trigger any alert. Me. You're right about that. A lot of the lock activity in a hotel in Las Vegas wouldn't trigger any alerts. But you'd have these spurts of activity where Paddock is repeating the same moves. Release a deadbolt, throw it again, then release it before opening and closing the doors like he did near 8 a.m. on 9/27. There's lots of examples of this. You could say room service and maybe guests were the reason, but taken as a whole, Paddock's manipulation of the doors seems like a nervous behavior, as if he couldn't keep his hands still. Either that or Paddock had something in mind. And you have me at a bit of a disadvantage here. I don't know where you're getting the number of that at least 7 cards on the bar counter. And I don't know the hotel rules on the number of backup cards that can be issued. I know Paddock repeatedly used the wrong cards on both rooms. 32-135 key card ends in a 19 and 32-134 ends in a 65, and I see him using the wrong card on both rooms on numerous occasions. It sometimes seems like he couldn't tell the difference between either card. But the hot SOS knows it was him even when he's using the wrong card, because the LIR shows his name. You said the risk of attracting attention would have outweighed the benefit of having the assurance no response from security was triggered. Unless, in the back of his mind, Paddock wanted security to come up and stop him. He couldn't stop himself, so let somebody else do it. But I do think the idea of multiple key cards to accomplices is intriguing. Eric, I agree with you on the fact that a lot of the lock activity seems superfluous. I'm just questioning the motivation you suggested. Some of the activity that seems superfluous at first can be explained. There is a lot left that cannot be easily explained. He definitely liked to use the deadbolt. In some cases, he probably used it to keep the door ajar when he was carrying multiple pieces of luggage. This could very well have been the case around 8 p.m. on 9/27, when he was seen leaving the hotel with 2 rolling suitcases. Paddock was obviously aware a door can be kept ajar by throwing a deadbolt. Therefore, I'm not believing any of the theories people have come up with about methods Paddock would have used to avoid shutting himself out when he went to place the bracket near 9:30 p.m. on October 1st. Tape on the lock, wire under the door, etc. The access cards are in picture 2 and 3 on page 91 of the final report. The front of the card shows the hotel towers, Mandalay Bay and Delano, against a blue sky, and the back is brown with some practical info. Only one of the cards on the counter shows the back. I actually see a total of 8 key cards on the counter. I really can't explain why he struggled so much with the opening of the doors, using wrong card or trying to open a door that was deadbolted. A certain absent-mindedness would be my best guess here. Me. Okay, very good. Things like Paddock's fondness for the deadbolt might seem superfluous at first, but might have a mundane meaning, i.e., keep the door open while he's moving luggage. The conversation continues. As soon as I get the chance, I'm going to look at page 91 of the final report. The absent-mindedness of a man with a rapidly aging brain does make a sort of sense. I read something recently where a person suggested that the heart of all rages is a thirst for revenge. I think Paddock wanted revenge against something, and the casinos were a useful target and a convenient scapegoat. The casinos made it too easy for me to become a drunk and a gambling addict. Did he rage against an industry he thought exploited his weaknesses? Let's not forget the readily available sex trade. A once physically strong and imposing man, now aging badly and angry that his life is turning to mush, but with just enough strength to lash out. At the end of the shooting, I picture a Stephen Paddock totally spent. Paddock had to have known in the eyes of just about everybody he'd be reduced to the worst of the worst. Now helpless and more or less cornered, he could blame everybody but himself and finish it with a suicide. And one more thing about any comparison to Daddy Benjamin. Benjamin Paddock never killed anybody and went straight the last 10 years of his life. Son Stephen will always be in a class by himself. Eric, there are some good thoughts in what you wrote above. Maybe he had come to realize he had led a meaningless life and that he was an empty shell, emotionally. When his physical strength and his wits were failing him too, perhaps he became so convinced of his actual and permanent inferiority as a human being and envious of normal people who are able to have a good time that he concluded the only way he could ever be at their level would be after killing them. In that theory, his anger was really directed at the people in the crowd, not at the casinos. Me. Thanks, Eric. The more I think about Paddock, the more I try to strip away anything that doesn't pertain to his sense of self. And that's the problem. His sense of self almost isn't there. He comes across as a robotic wreck. If enough of a man's sense of self has fallen away, all you're left with is a beast in a cave alone with his rage, and even his rage failed him in the end. I think you're right about his feelings of inferiority and envy. If Stephen Paddock was a master of microaggressions, as his brother Eric said, that superior pose was just a front, and the inner reality was something quite different. You and I are trying to make sense of a downward spiral which led Paddock to the point where he wanted to hurt as many people as possible. Did he do it simply to feel something? I'm sure we can agree on what he must have been feeling at the very end. I must die. And that's a black hole I can't begin to understand. The Las Vegas shooting is a horror story like no other. Horror stories I've read always had a resolution, but not this one. That's what makes it so perplexing. So in summation, I wonder if it's possible Stephen Paddock wanted attention so bad he'd even take it from hotel security, and when he didn't get it, he said, well, if you don't care, I don't care. Eric, on the other hand, doubts that Paddock was trying to attract the attention of security for any reason. He leans heavily towards accomplices to explain the opening and closing of doors in the LIR. He presents the extra key cards as exhibits A through G. The conversation continues. Please comment below. You know how much I love comments.